This is how vision problems often start after 60. Not with a dramatic event, not with sudden blurring or a flash of light or a pain that sends you to the emergency room. They start quietly. They start at night. They start in the last hour before you fall asleep, during a routine that feels completely harmless, that most adults over 60 follow every single night, and that most doctors never specifically warn you about, because the connection between what you do before bed and what happens to your retina over the following hours is one of the most underappreciated relationships in ophthalmology. Tonight, in the last hour before you sleep, your eyes will either begin the most important repair process they perform in any 24-hour period, or that repair process will be disrupted, delayed, and shortened by a nightly habit that is so ordinary, so universal, so completely unremarkable that you have never thought of it as having any bearing on your vision at all. By the end of this video, you will never look at your pre-sleep routine the same way again. Let me start with a fact that most adults over 60 have never been clearly told, and that changes the entire context for what I am about to share. Your retina does not rest while you sleep. While the rest of your body uses sleep for rest and general repair, the retina uses sleep for something far more specific and far more urgent. The retinal pigment epithelium, the single-cell layer that lies directly beneath your photoreceptors, the rod and cone cells that convert light into vision, performs its most critical maintenance work during the overnight period. Every day, as your photoreceptors respond to light, they shed the outermost portions of their outer segments, tiny membrane discs that have been exposed to the full photochemical load of the day's visual processing. These shed discs must be phagocytosed, consumed, and recycled by the RPE cells beneath them. This daily shedding and recycling cycle is the mechanism by which your photoreceptors renew themselves, replacing damaged membrane material with fresh, functional segments. This cycle is circadian, meaning it is timed by the biological clock and occurs in a specific daily window. Photoreceptor outer segment shedding peaks in the first hours of darkness. RPE phagocytosis, the clearing and recycling, follows, and the entire process requires specific physiological conditions to proceed efficiently. Those conditions include adequate melatonin, the hormone that signals the circadian system to initiate the darkness phase repair program. Melatonin is produced by the pineal gland in response to the absence of light, specifically in response to the absence of short-wavelength blue light in the environment. Reduced sympathetic nervous system activation, the calm, parasympathetically dominant physiological state of pre-sleep that allows the circulatory adjustments, including the increase in choroidal blood flow, that support retinal perfusion during the overnight repair period. A functioning nightly reduction in intraocular pressure, which normally falls during sleep, to give the optic nerve a period of reduced mechanical stress, supporting its recovery from the daytime pressure load. Now here's the problem. The pre-sleep habits of most adults over 60 actively disrupt all three of these conditions simultaneously, every night, for years. And the cumulative consequence of that nightly disruption, the incomplete photoreceptor renewal, the impaired RPE phagocytosis, the sustained sympathetic activation that impairs choroidal blood flow, is the progressive, silent, early-stage visual decline that doctors see beginning in adults in their 60s and cannot always explain by the structural changes visible on examination. The American Academy of Ophthalmology has identified the circadian regulation of retinal physiology as an emerging area of critical importance in understanding age-related vision loss, noting that the disruption of light-dark cycles has measurable effects on retinal health that are only beginning to be fully understood. The National Eye Institute has funded research specifically examining how the nightly retinal repair cycle is affected by light exposure patterns and sleep quality, finding that disruption of the normal dark phase retinal maintenance program accelerates the accumulation of RPE dysfunction that precedes age-related macular degeneration. Today I am going to walk you through 5 specific pre-sleep habits, things most adults over 60 do in the last hour before bed, and explain precisely what each one does to the overnight retinal repair process. And then I will give you the 5 changes that directly protect that repair cycle, without asking you to make dramatic changes to your evening. Drop your age in the comments right now, and tell me what you do in the last hour before bed. Do you watch television? Use your phone? Read a tablet? Simply knowing your pre-sleep routine will tell you immediately which of the 5 habits are most relevant to your vision. Habit number 1. Using a bright phone or tablet in a dark bedroom. The phone on the nightstand. The tablet propped on a pillow. The last 30 to 60 minutes before sleep spent scrolling, social media, news, email, games, with the bedroom light already off and the screen as the only light source in the room. This is the single most common pre-sleep habit of adults over 60, and from the perspective of the nightly retinal repair cycle, it is the most damaging. 2 simultaneous and compounding mechanisms are at work. The RPE phagocytosis cycle, the photoreceptor outer segment recycling that is the most critical retinal maintenance process, is timed to begin in the early hours of darkness, triggered by the melatonin-driven circadian clock, when melatonin is suppressed by evening screen use. This cycle is delayed. In an adult over 60 whose photoreceptors have already accumulated years of oxidative damage, and whose RPE cells have reduced phagocytic capacity, even a delay of 1 to 2 hours in the initiation of this repair cycle means that the photoreceptors are not being renewed as efficiently as they should be. Night after night. Mechanism 2. Maximum blue light delivery to the dark-adapted, dilated pupil. In a darkened bedroom, the pupil dilates to maximum diameter, typically 5 to 7 millimeters in older adults, to maximize light admission. A bright screen in this dark environment delivers its full blue light spectrum directly to a fully dilated pupil, producing a retinal irradiance level significantly higher than the same screen viewed in a lit room, where the pupil is partially constricted to 3 to 4 millimeters. In the aging retina, where the retinal pigment epithelium has accumulated lipofuscin, a fluorescent waste product that is photoreactive when exposed to blue light. This dilated pupil blue light exposure activates the A2E photooxidation pathway, a specific phototoxic mechanism in which blue light photons activate the A2E component of lipofuscin to generate reactive oxygen species that damage the RPE cells from within. This mechanism, blue light-induced A2E photooxidation in the RPE, is the same mechanism implicated in the earliest cellular changes of age-related macular degeneration. Research published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences identified A2E photooxidation as a significant contributor to RPE cell death in AMD, and the conditions most likely to activate this mechanism are precisely the conditions of darkroom screen use, dilated pupil, direct blue light exposure, and an RPE loaded with age-accumulated lipofuscin. Eliminate phone and tablet use in a darkened bedroom entirely. This is the single most protective pre-sleep change available for the aging retina. If pre-sleep reading is important to you, use a physical book with a warm bedside lamp. If you must use a device, enable the most aggressive night mode or warm color temperature setting. Use the lowest possible screen brightness and maintain ambient room lighting so that the pupil is partially constricted. Habit number 2. Watching television until the moment of sleep. The television in the bedroom or living room on until the moment sleep arrives. Often, for adults who struggle with sleep onset, the television running throughout the night as background sound and light. The comforting blue flicker of the television screen as the last visual experience of the day. Beyond the melatonin suppression mechanism shared with phone and tablet use, television in the bedroom creates a specific problem that phones and tablets do not. Intermittent light stimulation throughout the first hours of sleep. Many adults over 60 fall asleep with the television on, and the continued light and sound stimulation from the television during early sleep produces sleep fragmentation, frequent partial arousals from the lighter stages of sleep that prevents the sustained deep sleep during which the most critical phases of retinal repair occur. Slow-wave sleep, the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, is the period during which growth hormone is released when cellular autophagy, the process by which cells clear damaged organelles, is most active, and when the choroidal blood flow that supplies the outer retina with oxygen and nutrients is highest. RPE phagocytosis is most efficient during this sustained period of deep sleep. Television-disrupted sleep, with its frequent partial arousals, its irregular light pulses, and its sound stimulation that prevents the full autonomic transition to parasympathetic dominant deep sleep, shortens the duration and depth of slow-wave sleep. For the aging retina, this means shortened and incomplete nightly renewal, with accumulated photoreceptor debris from the previous day not fully cleared before the next day's light exposure begins. The National Sleep Foundation has documented that bedroom television use is one of the most consistent disruptors of sleep architecture, producing significant reductions in slow-wave sleep in adults who use television as a sleep aid compared to those who cease television use before sleep. Set a television off timer for no later than 30 to 60 minutes before your target sleep time. Remove the television from the bedroom entirely if possible. Research consistently shows that bedroom television is one of the strongest predictors of disrupted sleep architecture in older adults. If you rely on background sound for sleep onset, use a dedicated audio device with brown or pink noise, which provides sleep-promoting sound stimulation without the retinally damaging light emission of a television screen. Habit number 3. Eating a large meal or sugary snacks within 2 hours of sleep. A late dinner. A sweet dessert after the evening meal. A biscuit or snack with the evening television. These are the ordinary evening food habits of the majority of adults over 60, and their effect on the nightly retinal repair cycle is one that almost no one has ever been told about. What it is doing to the aging eye. Elevated evening blood glucose directly impairs the RPE phagocytosis cycle. Research has established that hyperglycemia, elevated blood glucose, directly inhibits the phagocytic activity of retinal pigment epithelium cells. The mechanism involves glucose-driven oxidative stress within the RPE cells themselves, the same cells responsible for clearing shed photoreceptor outer segments overnight. When blood glucose is elevated during the early hours of sleep, the window during which phagocytic activity should be at its peak, RPE phagocytic efficiency is reduced in direct proportion to the degree of glucose elevation. For adults over 60 who consume a large meal or sugary snack within 2 hours of sleep, blood glucose may remain significantly elevated through the first 2 to 3 hours of the sleep period, precisely the window during which RPE phagocytosis is most active and most important. The nightly photoreceptor renewal cycle is proceeding in a biochemical environment that impairs its efficiency. Over years of this pattern, decades of late evening glucose elevation suppressing the nightly RPE phagocytosis cycle, the accumulation of uncleared photoreceptor debris in the sub-RPE space is one mechanism by which drusen form, the hallmark deposits of early age-related macular degeneration that precede its clinical progression. Additionally, late evening meals elevate blood pressure and increase sympathetic nervous system activity, both of which interfere with the nocturnal reduction in intraocular pressure that gives the optic nerve its nightly period of reduced mechanical stress. Complete your final meal at least 3 hours before your target sleep time. This allows blood glucose to return toward its baseline level before the sleep phase RPE phagocytosis cycle begins. If evening hunger is a consistent problem, a small, low glycemic snack, a small handful of nuts, a few olives, a small piece of cheese, produces minimal blood glucose elevation and significantly less RPE phagocytic inhibition than the standard sweet evening snack. Habit number 4, sleeping with artificial light sources in the bedroom. A digital clock with a bright LED display, a street light filtering through thin curtains, a night light in the bedroom or adjacent hallway, the small indicator lights on chargers, televisions, and other electronic devices. Most adults over 60 sleep in a bedroom that is not truly dark and accept this as simply the reality of modern living environments. What it is doing to the aging eye. Even very low levels of light during sleep, levels below the threshold of conscious perception, affect the retinal physiology of the aging eye through the impair-mediated circadian pathway described in Habit 1. The intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells responsible for melatonin regulation do not require conscious visual processing. They operate independently of the primary visual pathway and can detect light levels well below those that produce conscious visual awareness. A bright alarm clock in an otherwise dark room, emitting light directly toward a sleeping face, stimulates these impairgeses sufficiently to produce partial melatonin suppression throughout the night. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that sleeping with even a moderate level of ambient light, compared to a dark sleeping environment, produced measurably lower overnight melatonin concentrations. The consequence for retinal health is a shortened and blunted melatonin signal, producing a shorter and less efficiently timed window for the dark phase retinal repair cycle. Habit number 5, skipping the pre-sleep eye care routine. Nothing specific for their eyes before sleep. General face washing, teeth brushing, and then to bed. The eyes receive no specific pre-sleep attention despite being the only sensory organs that will spend the next 8 hours in sustained contact with the bedding environment, exposed to whatever evaporative conditions the bedroom creates. What it is doing to the aging eye. After 60, the meibomian glands, the oil-secreting glands in the eyelids that produce the lipid layer of the tear film, have undergone progressive atrophy. Their secretion, the oil that prevents overnight evaporation of the tear film from the ocular surface during the blinking reduction of sleep, is less in volume and less stable in composition than in younger adults. As a result, The tear film of an adult over 60 during sleep is thinner, more evaporation-prone, and less protective of the corneal surface than in younger years. The cornea, the transparent dome of the eye through which all light must pass, is the only tissue in the body with no blood supply. It receives its oxygen from the tear film and from the atmosphere when the eyes are open. During sleep, when the eyes are closed, the cornea depends entirely on the tear film for oxygen and nutrient delivery. When the tear film is inadequate, as it is in the vast majority of adults over 60 with some degree of meibomian gland dysfunction, the cornea is exposed to hours of relative oxygen deprivation and potential surface desiccation. Over years of nightly inadequate tear film coverage, this produces corneal epithelial damage, the microscopic disruptions of the corneal surface that scatter light rather than transmitting it cleanly to the retina. This corneal surface irregularity is responsible for a significant proportion of the visual blur, glare sensitivity, and difficulty with night vision that adults over 60 attribute to their lenses or their retinas, when the actual source of the problem is at the very front of the eye. Additionally, the failure to remove eye makeup before sleep, relevant for women who wear eye makeup during the day, allows mascara, eyeliner, and shadow particles to migrate onto the ocular surface during sleep, where they produce foreign body irritation, ocular surface inflammation, and in some cases meibomian gland orifice obstruction that worsens the lipid layer deficiency underlying evaporative dry eye. The protective change: establish a deliberate, consistent pre-sleep eye care routine. 3 minutes every night. Warm eyelid massage. Apply a warm face cloth or warm eyelid compress, heated to a comfortable temperature, to closed eyes for 60 seconds. The warmth liquefies the solidified meibomian secretions that have accumulated in the gland orifices through the day's incomplete blinking, enabling their expression with gentle massage. 30 seconds of gentle circular eyelid massage following the warm compress expresses these secretions onto the eyelid margin, where they will be spread across the ocular surface by the blinking of sleep onset and will form the protective lipid layer the tear film needs overnight. Preservative-free lubricating eye gel. Apply 1 drop of a preservative-free gel formulation, thicker than standard eye drops, designed for overnight use, to each eye before sleep. This provides an immediate protective tear film supplement that persists through the first hours of sleep when meibomian secretion is least active and evaporative risk is highest. Complete makeup removal. Remove all eye makeup thoroughly before sleep with a dedicated oil-based remover that dissolves mascara without requiring the rubbing that itself damages the corneal surface and the eyelid margin. These 3 steps, 3 minutes, every night, directly address the nightly ocular surface deterioration that contributes to the visual quality decline most adults over 60 experience in the first months and years of its progression, without ever understanding what is causing it. The 5 protective changes. Change 1. Eliminate phone and tablet use in a darkened bedroom. The dilated pupil, the melatonin suppression, and the A2E photooxidation pathway make this the single most retinally damaging pre-sleep habit available to modern adults. If you change nothing else from today's video, change this. Change 2. Set a television off timer for 30 to 60 minutes before your target sleep time. Bedroom television is one of the most consistent disruptors of the slow-wave sleep during which the retinal repair cycle is most efficient. Change 3. Finish your final meal at least 3 hours before sleep. Late evening blood glucose elevation directly inhibits the RPE phagocytosis cycle, the nightly photoreceptor renewal process that determines whether your retina arrives at each morning's light exposure renewed or depleted. Change 4. Make your bedroom as dark as possible. Blackout curtains, a sleep mask, covered LED indicators. Even very low levels of ambient light during sleep suppress the melatonin signal that times the retinal repair cycle and reduce the choroidal vasodilation that supports overnight retinal perfusion. Change 5. Establish a 3-minute pre-sleep eye care routine. Warm eyelid compress and massage. Preservative-free overnight lubricating gel. Complete makeup removal. These 3 minutes of deliberate ocular surface care address the overnight corneal deterioration that is the earliest and most commonly missed contributor to visual decline in adults over 60. Vision problems after 60 rarely begin with a single dramatic event. They begin exactly as the title of today's video describes, quietly, gradually, in the nightly hours when you are not watching, in the habits that feel so ordinary and so harmless that they have never once occurred to you as relevant to the health of your eyes. The pre-sleep hour is not neutral time for your retina. It is the hour that determines whether the most important maintenance process your eye performs is given the conditions it needs, or whether it is delayed, shortened, and compromised by habits that were never designed with your visual health in mind. The 5 changes I described today are not difficult. They do not require expense or medical intervention. They require only the knowledge of what your retina needs from the hour before you sleep, and the decision to give it those conditions. Your photoreceptors are the most metabolically active cells in your body. They work every second of every waking hour. The least you can give them is a well-protected night. Leave a comment with your age and which of the 5 pre-sleep habits described today you are making. Which change are you implementing tonight? That question, tonight, not eventually, is the one that matters most. If this video gave you something worth knowing, please hit like. Share it with someone over 60 whose pre-sleep routine you know, someone who falls asleep to the television, someone who scrolls their phone in the dark, someone whose eyes are speaking to them every morning in the language of blur and dryness and discomfort that they have been accepting as normal. Subscribe for weekly content on vision protection, eye health habits, and the specific nightly choices that determine whether your sight remains clear after 60. Your retina repairs itself every night. Give it the environment it needs to do that work completely.